Hello and welcome, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. But before I introduce her, let me give you a bit of a background. Going back to last year, November, when I came across a Runner's World article on Latoya, where the headline read, Running needs something more radical than body positivity, and how this woman was an advocate for runner safety, body politics, marginalized groups in the running community, and much more. I started reading up more and I was very fascinated. I have been pursuing Latoya since then, and I'm very excited because it's actually finally happening now. So I'll give you a brief introduction, and then I will invite Latoya on. Noted by the Root 100 as one of the most influential African Americans, ages 25 to 45, Latoya Shauntay Snell is a sponsored multi-sport endurance athlete, body politics activist, motivational speaker, and content creator. Latoya, a food and fitness blogger of Running Fat Chef, was featured on multiple platforms such as the Third Hour Today, Good Morning America, the Huffington Post, and on the November 2020 cover of Runner's World. Snell is changing the narrative of ideal body types, mental health, and fitness stereotypes in the fitness and wellness space. As a contributing writer for several platforms, the global athlete ambassador for Hoka One One, and Trek Bikes ambassador, she uses her voice to talk about intersectionality in sports, to change the language for future generation in fitness and beyond. In today's conversation, Latoya will share how she uses fitness as a way to practice self-care and invest in her body confidence. She addresses certain myths and dispels common phobias, and how these things help her live a full life and find happiness. So with that, I will welcome Latoya.
Hey, how you
Hi,
doing?
Latoya. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's evening here and morning there. I can see the bright light coming through your window.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have people who've joined in, Latoya. So I think it's about an hour session, and we everyone's really really excited. So we will
Awesome.
jump right in and into the questions.
Perfect.
So yeah, so just to start with, Latoya, if you can just take us through your journey of how did you actually get into running, and when did you really start? How did it happen?
Absolutely. So I started running in 2013. I took a chance on doing a race uh, in 2014, but I did not think of myself as an athlete, and definitely didn't look at myself as a runner. I entered this space with the ideas of initially, with the idea of getting healthier, and actually losing weight. But a lot of my mindset actually shifted I want to say, within a couple of months of running, where I didn't care so much about the weight loss anymore. It was more about the feeling that I got from being able to run with others, to be able to build a community, a camaraderie, just being out there and being outdoors. It was such an amazing experience that I was like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't just make this as something that I only do once. So in
Yeah.
turn, I started running in 2013, and I trained for I believe it was the Michelob 13.1, and what I think would be equivalent to like, 21.1.
21.1. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be like
Yeah.
21.1 kilometers. And, I did that race, and I did not think that I would actually go as far as signing up for a marathon. And in turn, did my first marathon in 2015. And from there, I've been hooked and like attached to it ever since. I'm, fortunate enough to say that I've completed over 25 marathons. I've gone to further distance where I'm an ultra runner. The longest distance I've done to date is 100 kilometers, and it was incredibly tough. Much different than the road community that I'm used to, because in the ultra running community, it takes you through the trails, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's made me a better person, a stronger human being.
Yeah. And what is, I mean, the trail running and road running. So how do you get into that? Because trail running is actually kind of a different thing, right? Road running is all about pace. It's all about, your speed and all of that. And trail running is a totally different ball game.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, here's the thing. Like with road running, like depending on the distance and the community, because I think sometimes we do get intimidated of the idea of going into road running. The first thing we think of is you have to run fast. What
Yeah.
instead, I like to, encourage people, especially people who are just coming into this space, to really honor your own pace, honor your own breath, and honor your own movement as we move through any space, whether it's in the road community or on the trails. Now, it is a harder impact on your body when you are running on roads because we're taking on pavements versus in the trail running community, there's different elements that you're looking out for. So like when yesterday, my husband and I went for a hike, and anytime that I hear the word technical, I always keep in mind that means it must be a bunch of roots, or
Yeah.
it may be rocks, or something might be a little unstable. These are the things that sometimes we get to zone out during the road, when we're doing road running versus doing trails, where you always have to be mindful. So there's nothing wrong with having that active meditation. Just make sure that active meditation doesn't have you meeting the ground because you're not paying attention enough. So it's definitely a challenge. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. Right now, I'm currently on vacation, but where I'm at, I'm in a city, so I don't really have access to a lot of trails unless I go further upstate New York, or if I even go into like the parts where they consider as like Bronx, New York, or certain parts of Queens where we have a little bit more forestry. So without that training, I had to mock a lot of it through going on a treadmill and taking the inclines completely up. So if is there anyone that's out there that's like, I don't really have access to trails as much, but I would love to do a trail race. The first thing I always encourage people to do is, one, keep in mind of the weather, of the conditions of where you're going to go to. Secondly, if you don't have access to trails and you know that the place that you're going to has a lot of elevation, or is going to have you climbing a lot, taking consideration of mocking that on a treadmill or on a stair climber. The thing that got me through the Javelina 100K is that I used to go on a stair climber, or I would go on the actual stairs, and I would just do repeats from there. It would be like almost like a weird and sadistic version of hill repeats in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's so effective to build up your quads, to get your calves, acclimated, to get your ankles acclimated, to the things that you may encounter on a trail that you may not necessarily be able to have the privilege to run through. And I can say as a city girl, that unless I'm actually traveling or as a person who doesn't have a driver's license, I always had to rely on friends to kind of take me to certain places. I do plan on changing that this year.
Mhm.
But it was really helpful to put that incline on there. Don't worry about, being the fastest. What you want to get is acclimated to the distance, get acclimated to your breath work, and get comfortable with the discomfort, because there will be points where you're just like, wow, I really want to quit. This is too much. The incline is too steep. But I promise you, with being consistent, even if you are not the fastest or in first place, you will see it through.
Yeah, and I think, in one of your interviews, I had, kind of heard that the whole concept of like definitely you start with a run, you go into a half marathon, full marathon, and going into an ultra, I think also makes you very humble,
Thank you.
right? You are
Yes.
absolutely okay with the idea of walking, which
Yes.
is probably, looked down upon in a road race that how come you're
Yes.
walking?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, the thing is, here's the thing. What I love, and I think that's a huge difference when it comes down to the road community versus the trail running community. In the trails, it's actually encouraged. And it doesn't matter if you're someone that's like a back of the pack kind of runner, like someone who's like, typically like in the middle or one of the last finishers, versus, in the road community, it's just like, if you do not have that certain pace or you take a walk break, people look at it as a failure. In the trail running community, it doesn't matter what your pace is or if you're an elite runner, at some point, you may encounter parts where you have no choice but to walk. So you might see ultra runners, Tim Tollefson or a Jem Walmsley or Magda Boulay, and you'll see them on the trails, and you'll notice that they encountered this really harsh point, and now they are encouraged to walk it through. Sometimes that is really necessary for the active recovery. That, you know what, maybe this is too much of an impact. Maybe I'm going too fast according to schedule, because there is a such thing as going too fast. And now you have nothing left in you when you really need to pick up that pace, near the end. So I highly encourage people, don't get caught up on looking at everybody else, of them going out there faster. Chances are, if you start off a little bit slower, you preserve a little bit of energy. When you start reaching that middle point, you'll notice that the people who left you behind, now you're catching up with them and possibly surpassing them on the course. But even if you don't, this is not about them. This is completely about you. So for me, when I go out there and I'm just like, you know what, I want to preserve and I actually want to absorb in the race environment, it is okay for me to do run walk, intervals, or it's okay for me to power walk through a certain distance. There's nothing wrong with it. The goal is just to be out there and to finish.
Yeah. And, through your journey, you've like, when you started running and now you've kind of, people look up to you as a
Yes.
role model, right? People follow you and you have this huge following. So when you're actually racing, when you sign up for a marathon or an ultra marathon, do you feel overwhelmed? Like, do you feel that if I'm not able to finish this or if I DNF, then what will my followers say? Do you feel that pressure sometimes when you run?
Oh man, I would be lying to say that I don't. I think I feel it now more than ever. It's different when you don't have media coverage. It's different when you don't have that pressure of, I'm not just running for me, but now I'm running for a community. All of us
Yeah.
have that race day nerves. Where what people will tell us the advice of, go to sleep early, make sure you eat and hydrate, days before your race to make sure that you're prepared. Make sure you use the bathroom a certain amount of time so you don't have any accidents. We do all of that race day from prep, and we get out there and we're filled up with so much anxiety and nerves. I feel like since I've had so much media coverage since, like, I think a lot of my media coverage got picked up in 2017. Since then, is added on this extra layer because I know realistically I'm not just running for myself. And it took a year for me to acknowledge that, that reality, that I'm not just running for myself anymore. I'm running on behalf of women of color, of color, of people of different backgrounds, marginalized communities. A lot of the things that I speak up about is elevating and making the race, the running, environment a little bit more inclusive. To be aware that there are certain issues where some people don't feel safe, running in certain areas where certain things are not as progressive. Maybe the lights are not on, it's not a well lit area. So I take all of that with me on every event, and it does feel a little bit sometimes like a weight. But I have to remind myself now more than ever that before I run for everybody else, I have to remind myself of why I showed up. So if you happen to find yourself in a position like mine, or maybe even a larger platform, or even if it's not even so much a media thing, maybe it's something like, I'm running for charity, and if
Hmm.
I don't finish this, now I feel like a failure. You're not a failure. You showed up, you trained, you put in the hard work. That there are plenty of things that you do before race day,
Yeah.
and as long as we keep that in mind, it makes it a little bit easier to celebrate yourself before you even start it, because it is a celebration and it's an amazing accomplishment to sign up for 5K, 10K, a full marathon, a longer distance. You need your brain to be as sharp as possible on race day to prepare yourself for the things that you train for and some of the things that might be unpredictable. If you happen to come across a moment where it's like, great, I just DNF'd, or something happened last minute where it interfered with you even showing up, you're not a failure. Things happen. There are certain things that you can train for 13 to 26 weeks and still find yourself encountering this hurdle where it's like, I have to respect my body enough to not go on further.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that is one thing that, runners or athletes need to keep in their mind that, they really take it to heart of a DNF, for example. Oh,
Yes.
I put in so much effort. And sure, I mean, a lot of energy, time, everything went behind it.
Right.
But it's okay. Like you said, you're running for yourself, and the kind of peer pressure kind of builds in, but we need to stay away from that.
Absolutely. Like I signed up for over 200 races. I've been running since 2013, and I can say I've completed 200 races, but there would have been much more that I could have, that I've had um, situations where I had to get pulled off a course, because it was just too much. And then I think about races that I did complete where in hindsight, I was just like, man, I really wasn't feeling that great that day. This would have been a great day to actually stay home. Instead of actually, risking my health, risking my own personal safety, because I was so worried about what others were thinking or how they was going to look at me as a failure. I think that we need to actually encourage people to actually be smarter about this, about for their own personal safety, for their own personal health, versus looking at it as I have to finish because I don't want to look a certain way in front of a
Yeah,
certain person or a certain
yeah,
community. You are not a failure if you do not show up to your race day, even when you train, because it may be a great way to actually set boundaries with yourself. And by proxy, you'll be sharing with others. Like I saw a comment that actually came in about, Simone Biles. I think that she's an excellent example, of what it means to set boundaries, that you can be dynamic at what you do. That, you just, unfortunately, this is not the day for you, that you're encountering, maybe it's a mental struggle, maybe it's a physical struggle, maybe it's an emotional struggle, or something that's an internal that you haven't shared with other people. It is necessary to know yourself before anybody else in this world actually know you. I think we have to start normalizing that conversation when it comes down to fitness, because there's too many people out there with the idea that we have to constantly go for it. And if we don't
yeah,
hit first place, second place, third place, or if we don't go out there and perform and show up, that means that I'm no longer an athlete. Athletes are still athletes when they're injured. Athletes are still athletes when they rest. I think that you're a better athlete when you actually rest and recover and respect your body, versus trying to be an athlete that is trying to do so much that you have very little to put out there. Remember, if it's anything that's I've went according to when I was in culinary school, they always told us quality over quantity. I think that same method can be applied to your sports and any activity that you take on.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a good one. Yeah. That's a good quote that you just mentioned. Yeah. So actually, Latoya, it's like in any event, in any marathon, in any race, people are always, looking at the elites and, the pace and the speed and all of that, like we just spoke about, and you represent the community right now that gives hope to a lot of people, which is, I think, the majority of the world of the population is non-elite,
Yes.
right? So how do you motivate a set of people who are probably just struggling and they've reached a certain distance but it's still not the finish line? And how do you actually, and the guys who've actually, the elites or people who've wanted whatever time they wanted have kind of finished the race, but people who are struggling, I mean, they've obviously reached at the start line after a lot of effort. And like you said, that, once you reach the start line, half the battle is won there. At least you had the
Right.
courage to stand at the start line. So how, I mean, what really goes on in people's minds? Because it's like, it's not finishing. And why did I sign up for this? And my friends have already finished. And you probably see people wearing medals on the other side of the road, kind of, oh, so and so is finished and I'm still struggling. So how do you motivate people who are actually just kind of making it or just not being able to make it, but still finished like 24, 25 miles and still going.
Here's the thing, I always want to remind people that elite athletes are still human, and we all started, well, not we, because I'm not an elite athlete, but I mean, as an athletes, we all started, we all have a humble beginning. As it doesn't matter if you are you are an elite athlete or you're an everyday athlete like myself, it doesn't matter where, how fast you are. We all have a humble beginning. We all have the ability to we have to learn that breath work. We have to learn what it is of, opening up our stride at a certain point. Maybe you have limitations. I'm an athlete with disabilities. I have limitations in my mobility that some days don't look like others, where there are some days that I can run a little bit faster, while other days all I have in me is a walk. Instead of looking and comparing myself to someone that finished, I have to acknowledge their humanity and say, I'm not them and they're not me. And what they're able to do is definitely something to be cheered for. But what I'm doing right now at this moment is enough to cheer me on too. It does not reduce me. It does not make my worth any less than somebody else that's out there who finished it an hour or two, maybe even 3 hours ahead of me. That's their journey. That's their life to live. That's their experience. Now, maybe you aspire to actually be faster, and maybe that is, possible, or maybe it's not. Meet people where they're at the very moment, instead of looking at it as, man, I'm not really an athlete until I hit, a 9-minute mile, or I'm not an athlete unless I fulfill this certain quota. Instead of comparing and contrasting notes, because everybody goes out for a different reason.
Yeah.
I encourage you to meet yourself right where you are at this very moment, not your future self. And definitely, because we're going through this quarantine, or, we're going through this hardship right now with COVID-19 and everything's going on with the pandemic. I heavily encourage you to meet yourself where you are right now, not who you used to be or the person that you desire to be in the future. Meet yourself at your realistic standards of saying, you know what? This is what I trained for. This is how I show up. And all I can do is give it my all and my absolute best. And if my best today means that I signed up for a 21.1 kilometer event and I only have 14 kilometers in me, it is okay. There are other opportunities to show up over and over again. The people that we admire on the screen most times, or we read about in magazines, their stories are not dynamic because they're always winning. Their stories are powerful because they continuously showed up over and over and over again. What's not talked about enough in the media is about the failures that come along in this space. Because I can tell you, some of these elite athletes are my friends. I'm grateful to call these people friends and colleagues. At times, because I'm a sponsored athlete, and when I talk to them on a one-on-one, what I can tell you is that there are not enough hardship stories that are shared out there about the actual hurdles. When you see someone that you admire, that you read about, on a screen, and don't realize that person ran through an injury, or that person, just had their first child, and now they're going through postpartum depression. They're going through certain hurdles. They have certain issues at home. They lost a loved one. We watched this through the Olympics. We watched so many people, so much devastation of how many people were pushing through these hard moments that none of us would ever know about if they didn't talk about it. I feel like there is a responsibility that I think the media needs to be held accountable when it comes down to covering those type of topics, because we can't just hear these happy, joy stories. We need to hear more stories from everyone, not just the elite athletes, but the people who are in the middle of the pack, the people who are in the back. And so we can all see ourselves accurately represented in this space.
Yeah, and it's like everyone has a different journey, everyone has a different story. Who knows what is happening in whose lives at what time. So it's about, we don't know really what's going on. So before you actually start judging anything about anyone or anything, it's like just run for yourself, do things for yourself, and be positive about it.
Right.
Yeah, and you've spoken a lot about body positivity, and it's like one of your quotes is like, body positivity is not about a number, it's not about a look, it's about embracing yourself at your present self.
Right.
So there is a typical image that people have of runners or athletes, that people have in mind. So how can people be encouraged by the bodies, by their bodies, irrespective of how they look? Because people are always struggling with, I need to look a certain type for people to know, oh, she runs or he runs.
Listen, here's my thing. You are the wildest dream that you ever desired. You just don't know it yet. And I think that I think that sometimes when we don't see ourselves, we don't think that we are good enough, that we are strong enough, we are beautiful enough, that we are just not all of these things, that we're only seeing a certain percentage. We're probably seeing 1 to 5% of a population. And keep in mind that we are also, like, and I say this as a former photographer, that some of the images that you are seeing on magazines, we're talking about things that are photoshopped. You're talking about proper lighting. You're basically battling a computer in the sense when you're
Yeah.
looking at these images or you're looking at these videos. I mean, I can create highlight reels of myself where I can always look like the best version of myself when I'm out there. If I curate my feed a certain way, they're like, wow, she's amazing. She never makes any mistakes. She doesn't even eat food like everybody else. But it's just, this is the illusion that's put out there. So what I do remind people of is when we speak about body positivity, we're not just talking about the physical appearance of a body. We have to talk about the mindset, about how we feel, how we're really feeling and connecting with ourselves, that it does not require for you to be a certain size or a certain shape or to have a certain ability to be dynamic at what you are doing. Now, again, and this is, unfortunately, I have to bring this back to the media. We do not see enough of ourselves out there.
Mm.
We are not accurately represented. When I think about being as a Black woman, and I'm going to emphasize being a Black African American, like being an African American woman. When people thought about runners, they thought about someone who was smaller in size, and they would say, "Oh yeah, of course, Black runners make it the first place." And what they were referring to were probably West African, runners,
Yeah.
or they were referring to a certain region, but they were not referring to, an American runner, not a plus
Yeah.
size American runner. So when you don't see that in your magazines, when you don't see that in your programs, when you don't see or hear those conversations encouraged, we start to say, well, man, it must be something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with the way that I look, and I have to fix it. No, you don't need to fix it. What you need to fix is your mindset, and
Mm.
remind yourself you belong here because you are here. You exist, and as long as you acknowledge and meet yourself where you are, then this is the best version of you every single day that you wake up. And I never thought I would be a person that would be featured on a magazine, to be very honest. I never thought I would have a cover. I never thought, if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be in this field, I would have laughed at you. I thought that my place was anywhere else except for mainstream media. So if someone like me, who had no aspirations 10 years ago to ever be acknowledged or looked at as an athlete, a person who looked in the mirror and I saw every nasty comment that I said about myself when I looked at a reflection, and it took for me to change my mindset for that, to do the things that I said was impossible. I think that that's something that everybody else can do as well. It may not look the same. It may not, display the same. Who knows? Some of you will be faster. You'll be way faster than me, and possibly are already faster than me. But it's about your own personal story and how you honor yourself as you write about yourself, as you look at yourself, as you feel about yourself. And if you are having a rough day, there's nothing wrong with admitting that I'm having a rough day or a rough week, a rough year. You don't have to push yourself as an athlete through these things. Instead, meet yourself where you are.
Yeah.
Meet yourself with the way that you're looking at your body. You don't see the images that you like out there. Start taking pictures of your friends and the people who do look like you. Start encouraging the people around you that do look like you and start celebrating that instead of just looking at the TV screen or looking at social media of someone else who has a different lifestyle or, is what you desire to be. There's nothing wrong with it, admiring people. But when you start to admire them so much that you now start to lose a sense of your own personal pride, that's a disservice in itself.
And this is so prominent. I mean, this is so well said. I mean, people are always striving to be someone else.
Yeah.
They're always conscious of themselves. Oh, I don't look a certain way, so I can't post this, or I don't look a certain way, so I can't wear this, for example.
Yeah.
Right? They're always super conscious about themselves and always not liking themselves for some reason. So
Right.
very well said, Latoya. Very well said. I'll just take some
Definitely.
of the comments that people
Yeah.
are saying. Latoya would love you to throw back to those days when you started trail running and some of the earliest challenges you faced and what kind of mental prep helped you to get you into a constant rhythm. Were you always into sports even when you were a kid? Learning about your journey will help people like me who have looked at sports as something not for me.
Mm-mm. Well, I want to take that in reverse order. So, were you always into sports when you were a kid? No, I like to be very honest. If I would have saw myself as any type of athlete, I thought I would be a boxer. My dad and
Wow.
we love watching boxing. But the thing about boxing is that almost every discipline that you look at, any type of sports, it almost brings you right back into running. Like running, especially like I would say in America, the way that we look like running. Running was the thing that you did as a preparation for another sport. I
Mm.
never in my wildest dreams thought I would be a runner because of so many factors as far as safety. I grew up and I still live in Brooklyn, New York. I am 36 years old, and when I think about growing up in the areas that I grew up in, it wasn't exactly the safest to be able to run around, and definitely not run around while female. So it was something different to to actually take in consideration of, like, I don't know if this is for me. When I think about running, even as some of these activities were available and afforded to me, it was always encouraged for me to do shorter distances. So the things that we had available to us was more like track and field. There was no, that we weren't encouraged to do longer distances or do, cross country. These were things that I honestly didn't hear about unless I, looked at the Olympics or I looked at a major event like the New York City Marathon. Outside of that, when you don't have access to something you don't think is there for you, and
Yeah.
you have to really step outside the box to make that something that you want afforded to you, especially since, I grew up when the internet wasn't really so much of a big thing. The beauty of, this day and age is we have access to everybody. This live is made access to people because we
Yeah.
have that access to technology. Now, as far as the throwback to the days when I started trail running, oh my gosh, one of the biggest things, and this kind of actually touches on size, the size diversity was a major thing for me, where I felt it in the road community, but in the trail running community, it was very interesting to see different sizes and shapes. That some that looked like me, some that didn't look like me. And that's something that I don't often see in the road running community. In the road running community, typically people are very, very much leaner. And then you'll see maybe like, a couple of people in the back that look like me. And it can be a little intimidating.
Mm.
one of the things that mentally intimidated me was just like, I'm used to being able to run in certain attires. One of the things that I did was I ran in a sports bra. And it would throw people off of this plus size woman, running in a sports bra. It's just like, who do you think you are? And that's not socially acceptable because it's not like you have a six pack. But I'm like, I'm hot like everybody else. I don't want to overheat. Why am I changing up my comfort level? When I'm going out for a run, why am I scared to be in my own skin? So that was mentally one of the challenges that I had to get past in the road and the trail running community. The physical hardships in the trail running community for me was getting past the idea of technical issues. So we're talking about roots in the ground, or in the case of like when I did the Javelina 100K, which is based in Fountain Hills, Arizona. It's a complete opposite from what I'm accustomed to, because I'm accustomed to actually running in the roads. I'm also not accustomed to seeing things like snakes, spiders. They have the actual animal, the javelina, which I didn't know was a real thing.
Oh.
And it's a wild boar, basically. And they're like, oh, yeah, the moms can get a little vicious. I thought it was a joke until I actually saw one and I saw the family. And when you're not around those type of things, the things that you're not knowledgeable about, it can scare you. So if you're going into a trail race, and let's say that you want to do a destination run, maybe like I know a lot of the people that's listening here, you're listening from India. Let's say that you decide that, what, I want to go to the UK. I want to go to London, basically. And I want to go for a run there. And maybe they have some trails that's available there. Taking consideration of the landscape. Is it something that's going to be a switchback? Is it going to be something that I can easily get lost in? Learn about things like blazes. So you want to be knowledgeable about the signs, the symbols that you have to look for, the markers that might be on trees or the post. You want to know that, or the flags. On race day, we typically would see flags out there to let you know that you're going in the right area. You want to educate yourself about the course that you're running on, or maybe you're not a person that wants to sign up for a race. You want to educate yourself about the place you are traveling to. Think about the different routes that you're going to take. Think about the hardships that you may encounter. Getting past the fear of running at nighttime is a huge thing, especially towards my female runners. A lot of us tend to get a little nervous, and when we hear some of the conversations that's geared towards us is, you should run with a buddy, or you can't run alone as a woman. You can absolutely, depends on how you feel about it. I definitely encourage you to figure out what makes you feel comfortable. For some people, they may need the buddy system. Make sure your buddy is not someone that's going to annoy you for 10 to 12 miles of running. If you're not much of a talker when you run, then find someone who's not much of a talker when you run. Or maybe you do need someone that actually does talk a lot as they run, and they acknowledge that maybe I'm not going to give you back enough, but it's great to have someone that's here that can actually, just be here physically with me. Keep in mind that you want to have things like, like you want to have a headlamp. Keep in mind the fueling that you are bringing outside. What your friend may be carrying may not work well or respond well to your body. Also take in consideration, if you are going for a trail run, you might run in areas where you might encounter bears or wildlife that's going to smell the food that you are bringing along. So be careful about what type of, hydration and fueling that you're bringing into certain areas. If you have something that a bear is going to smell, then you're in danger. Do the accurate research to look into what happens in my worst case scenario. Like when I ran in in Fountain Hills, Arizona, I thought about what happens if I encounter a bug bite. What happens if I get bitten by a snake and, it happens to have venom? What happens if, these things, not to scare you, but to prepare you. Because the thing
Yeah.
is, like, a lot of people look at this as, oh my God, this makes me not want to go out here
Right.
and do these things. No, instead, you are empowering yourself. And this is part of the training plan. Let's normalize that education that's required to be able to do the things that we love and the things that excite and invigorate us. So maybe, Javelina, like I saw in the comments, Javelina,
Yeah.
it's probably not the thing that you want to do. That's cool. You don't have to do um you don't have to do the Javelina 100. Find something that's much more approachable. You do not have to do 100K. Maybe you can find a trail race that's 25K. Maybe you can find a race that's a 10K. Get to know someone in the running community, and then you can run as a group. And the more that you revisit this area, not only are you learning the course, but you're learning what it is to change up your footwork when you're doing trail running, to know how to move your body. And remember, some things are things that you cannot train for on the trails. That means that you have to incorporate mobility work. You may not need to incorporate shrimp training once or twice a week to make sure that your glutes are properly activated, to make sure that you're stretching out certain muscles, that you're not running so much that you're now putting yourself at risk for overusage injuries in certain areas. So keep in mind all of these things. And I know this is a lot that I'm kind of throwing out there, but these are the things that I had to learn over years. Just when I thought that I understood it, I didn't. There were certain races that I went across, and I was just like, why is there a river here? And I realized that some races required for you to actually do water crossing. And I didn't know how to swim, so I was scared. Like the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, I'm going to drown. That was another skill that I had to learn,
Yeah.
in certain areas. So it really helps to learn the areas that you are going to do a race, or just learning the map of wherever you're running.
Yeah, and running or walking, what happens now is, especially with the pandemic, because people were so locked up inside, there's always that urge to go into the nature, like to
Mm,
be out in the open. So people are always looking for these small trails or forests, be it a walk, be it a run. But like you said, there are a lot of things to keep in mind, because if you're signing up for a race, then, through a certain distance, it could have any kind of hurdle in between, be it an animal, be it a river, be it a bite, a bug, or just about anything.
right.
But I think, like you said, not to scare people off, but it's a whole different experience, especially for people like us who live in cities.
Right.
You don't get to see those things often, so it's always exciting to sign up for a race which is a trail or a mountain, or just about something different than a city and roads.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, like, if you are, so like me, for I believe, yeah, I'm at sea level because I'm right now, I'm in Virginia, but in New York, I'm definitely I'm at sea level. And when I travel to the west coast of the United States, it is normal to see so much mountains. And the things I had to take in consideration is the altitude. So if you travel to an area, let's say that I think at New York, I think we're somewhere around 50 for our
Hmm.
altitude. And then I would travel to somewhere like Boulder, Colorado, which is
Yeah.
5280. The air is thinner the higher you go up, especially when we're talking about mountains, or going on certain trails. So when I got off the plane, the first thing I noticed was my nose feels really congested. And one of the things that the locals were encouraging me on was, please drink more water. Make sure you drink
Hmm.
enough water. Sometimes some people water is not enough. There's people that need medication to be able to
Yeah.
properly acclimate to being in that area, because there's scientifically, we're talking about, I believe it's your red blood cells is basically
Hmm.
trying to match that new area and it may not be producing fast enough where it's actually acclimating to that new area. So it may take some people a couple of days, while others may take about 2 to 3 weeks to be able to adapt to that thinner air. It's much easier to go in reverse where you're a person that was accustomed to living at 10,000 feet
Absolutely. Yeah.
versus and then going to sea level, because they're probably going to be a little bit faster because they're
Yeah.
accustomed to being in that area. So,
Right.
these are the things I had to learn as a trail runner, that I just couldn't just openly throw myself into those spaces. If you do have the finances to do it, if you are finding yourself going from sea level to an area that may have a higher altitude, I would say gradually build yourself up over time. Over 2 to 3 days, I traveled to this next city that could acclimate me to, thank you, that can acclimate me to being in this particular area. That was exceptionally helpful. Instead of going to that area and thinking I'm going to go straight out there for a run, I hiked it. I walked it.
Yeah.
I walked it several times to see, how is my lungs feeling? How is my body responding to this? Is it something that I need to change up? You may notice, and sorry to get a little TMI or a little detailed with you guys. What also happens with altitude change is that your fecal matter actually changes right along with it. So there's a lot of body changes that happens, and you might notice that, you know what, I'm a little bit more dehydrated. I need a little bit more electrolytes in this space, or getting used to using things like trekking poles. And I think that knowledge is really helpful, where you realize maybe I can run or maybe I can walk, but this would be much more enjoyable if this is a course that allows
Hmm.
trekking poles. Putting those
Right.
into use will help you enjoy your experience much more than trying to tough it out and look at this as a road race. There are certain
Yeah.
things that are just not the same in this type
Yeah.
of environment.
And I think these are the places, and this is why it attracts city people to be there. You
Yeah.
know, and on that note, we have someone saying, "Come to India,"
Yes.
because there is, so a lot of us, kind of travel to a place called Ladakh, which is
Mm.
north,
Yes.
really, really north in India. So exactly the same what you said. So you need to acclimatize, you need to give it time, you need to do all of this. So it's like a
Right.
dream run for people because it's scenic, it's out of the city, it's high
Yes.
altitude. And I think people are willing to do all that to get out of the
Yes.
city. So they don't care how tough it is, they'll prepare for it, they'll get that experience to run in high altitude and obviously with proper acclimatization, like you said.
It's beautiful. Like, I mean, I've only seen pictures, and
You
it is.
must come here.
Yes, I have to. Like, it is definitely on my bucket list. Like, I want to be able to spend a couple of weeks, and just come to India and just immerse myself in the culture. I just have such a deep respect for being able to travel, to be able to experience different places that's outside of my home.
Yeah.
There just certain, to immerse myself just in the food. Like, as a chef, I just love, like, just food and the flavor, and just being able to go to different places and just to really see what I'm actually capable of doing. So, like, yeah, like, if that is a place that you desire to actually go and, do your trail running or do your hiking or do you just walking,
Yeah.
really prepare yourself to adapt to your environment. Because there's trail running, and then there's sky running, which is a completely
Right.
different animal. I
Yeah.
have personally haven't done sky running. It actually scares me.
So if it
It's truly.
scares you, that means you're definitely going to do it,
Yes,
knowing
exactly.
you.
It is something that I look at as, this is probably something that I will probably touch maybe like once, and it will be a shorter distance. But, it's something that does excite me. And when the views from that high up, it's just something that's unmatched. The only time that I've ever seen views like that when I'm not running is really like when I actually went skydiving. When I went skydiving and I went paragliding, and that was in Chamonix, France. So being able to see things from that high up it actually changes your mindset just a little bit too. Where you look at the world and it's just like, wow, things are much smaller here. And I think about my problems and I'm just like, my problems are much smaller from up here as well. That when you're able to look at it from that perspective, it opens you up to so many possibilities.
Yeah. It's like, that example of NASA going up to space and looking at Earth and, found it that it's this tiny speck in this
Yes.
whole universe. And it just changes perspectives of,
Right.
talking about politics, talking about people, we're
Right.
just like tiny, tiny, tiny specks.
It's small. It's small in
Yeah.
comparison. Like, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. We're still human. We all, even if we have so many differences, and I know that a lot of us are kind of going through those hardships right now, where we're just conflicted, with everything that is an overstimulation that's
Yeah.
happening. And that's global. It doesn't matter where you
Yeah.
are. We're just all feeling overwhelmed by the different events that's happening everywhere, where we feel like we're losing control. And I know a lot of athletes can relate to that, so much so that it is actually translating in their fitness, is translating in their desire to either go out more or to actually pull back and not go out more, because the world is a little scary right now. But
Yeah.
I remind people to just really be easy on yourself during these times. If it means that you have to take a couple of minutes and just steal that happiness for about 5 minutes, just do it. Please just do it. And if you are a person who was just like, the pandemic closed down everything and now I'm new into running, do your best, to educate yourself on being in this space, learning, how to tell people on your left, on your right, being knowledgeable. Like if you're a person that run and have a little bit of spit that, sometimes build up, depends on how you're breathing, just be knowledgeable about the people that's around you, because I think that experience not only makes you richer in that education, but it also helps the other people out there, to make, for them to be able to open up to you as well.
Yeah. So you can be the role model for like so many people in your own space, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
think
we
we
have
all
a
are.
Yeah, a little bit of a funny comment here. I hear from a relative in Boulder that the schoolboys just go down to Arizona and beat the schoolboys there.
I believe it. I believe it, because the thing is, like, I mean, you're like, depends on what part of Arizona. So, like, because there are certain parts of Arizona that do have a little bit of altitude, but there is something different about Colorado in general. Like when you go to, like, one of the lower points that you'll find in Colorado would be Denver, and that's somewhere around, I want to say 2,600, in altitude. And then you
Mm.
go into Boulder, and that's 5,280. Then you go up a little bit higher where you go to Golden, Colorado, and I think it's like 6,600. But then you go to places where they do the Western states, and we're talking about anywhere between 8,000 to going to Breckenridge, which is around like 10,000, 12,000 in feet. So when you have someone like them, come and that's accustomed to being in this, oh yeah, they're probably going to blow them out the water. It's
Yeah,
like, I'm like, oh wait, hold up, I get a little bit more oxygen here. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna push it because you're not battling so much. So
yeah.
there's some benefits of being accustomed to running in that type of altitude. Like it trains you, and there's equipment out there that you can buy, from different sporting companies or places that actually provide it. But even with it, I personally feel like there's nothing like actually being in it. And I don't think it actually can prepare you for how much of a restriction it can be, or how taxing it can be on your breathing and your lungs, until
Mm.
you truly adapt to it.
Yeah. We'll look forward to your next skyrunning
Oh,
event
oh,
whenever you sign up for it.
I'm thinking about it. I'm scared. I'm scared. Like it's the one thing that I'm just like, I don't know. But I think that if I actually find a couple of friends who are willing to actually come with me, I might consider doing like a short sky running event. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, but I'm like in my heart and hearts, I know that I'm good for road running. I'm great for for trail running. And I just I don't beat myself up over the time. I don't worry about what everybody else is doing around me. I don't even worry about the medals anymore. I just worry about the experience and the joy, meeting new people. I like my biggest thing these days is when I sign up for a run, I just love being able to interact with people who
Mm.
follow me, and we just talk out there and I get to learn their lives. I get to vicariously live through them, through especially with new experiences. I just love immersing myself into somebody else's story.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you spoke so much about like, I mean, not so much. You spoke a bit about the food and your experience in
Yes.
cooking and all of that. So we have a question. Do you cook Indian food?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So what I am obsessed with, because I don't feel like the states actually have proper curry. Um, like I am obsessed with green curry. Oh my gosh. Like if it was up to me, I would probably slow cook some type of fish. Like something that's like a meaty fish, like maybe something like along the texture of a shark or like a whitefish, and just really just cover it in green curry, and do some type of gosh, I can see it in my head. Like I really got excited off of the food question. I like to take greens, and I like to do like coconut, like I do like a coconut curry.
Right.
I mix it with some greens. I will throw in like different type of peppers, do some type of garam masala, and then I infuse that into it. And like it's just so it's unmatched. Now I cannot do the heat top. Like I will say that I am more of an American spicy. I cannot match that heat level that I sometimes see in places like in Asia. Like it's so intense. it is it
Yeah.
is it is so intense, and I'm like, how are you able to eat that? Like my friend, like she can eat that, and she's just like what's wrong? And I'm like, I'm sweating, and like the spice level is like 2 compared
Yeah.
to her 8, and she's just like, oh, what's the problem? And I'm just like, I can feel this coming out of my pores. Like I can see it, like I can feel it coming out of my pores. But like for me, like I love anytime that I do any type of Indian dishes, I really love. I don't know what it is about the spices and the herbs. Like it's just like, especially when you toast it on the stove, and you really waking those things up. There's something about pairing it up with chickpeas, pairing it up with like some type like coconut milk. There's a rich flavor that comes out that when you pair it up with like basmati rice or a jasmine rice or something of that nature, it's beautiful. It's like, and the colors are just so unmatched. And I saw another person that said, "Do you like chicken tikka masala?" Oh, yes.
Chicken tikka.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. The first time I ever had it was in culinary school. And I'm gonna be honest, I was intimidated. I was just like, I've never seen this. And what the beautiful part about food is that it connects people. It connects people from different areas. It doesn't matter what your background is. I might not even like the person I'm sitting across the table from. But the beautiful part about food is that when it's good, it can make you have a commonplace. So, for me, I think food really connected me, and it helped me gain an appreciation for a blend of cultures. And honestly, it turned into like one of my favorite cuisines. I don't even think I'm supposed to be here in the United States.
You need to come to India. See, we have
Yes,
a lot of people commenting
gosh,
and
yes, like
definitely taking you for a food walk. Oops,
listen,
food run.
oh, please do. I will love you forever. And if you take me on, like we can do that all day. We can run 2 miles, and then we can go for a food run, and we can run another 2 miles, and we can go to another place. Like, oh my gosh, like the one thing that I'm trying to learn about um would be the desserts.
Yeah.
I would love to know, because I think that I think is more of a savory touch that I can probably get from like an Indian cuisine than it is like here in the United States, where we kind of indulge more on the sweet side. And I'm looking for that blend of the savory and the sweet. And I feel like that would be everything. That would be everything just to go, just to really experience it.
Yeah, you just need to like come down here now when things
Yes.
settle. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And on that food note, I have like a rapid fire
Uh-oh.
question for you.
Yes.
So I know you love those.
Yes, I do.
So yeah, so I will jump right in. Latoya the runner, Latoya the chef, or Latoya the blogger?
Oh my gosh. Do I have to choose between those?
Yes, quick, quick, quick.
Let's go, chef.
Chef. Okay, okay. Your favorite gym exercise?
Oh. Deadlifting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that seems to be a favorite of quite a few people. Nice.
Deadlifting for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And your favorite workout equipment?
Favorite workout equipment, battle ropes.
Okay, nice. Favorite song while running?
Ooh, uh, running by No Doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, surprisingly,
Nice.
yeah, it's definitely one of those. That's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, yeah. And your all-time favorite healthy snack?
Ah,
Okay,
it's gonna
it can
sound.
be
No,
unhealthy
no, no, no,
too.
no. It's gonna sound weird, but anybody that follows my feed, they will know that this is a absolute truth. I like making kale chips. It's the weirdest thing. It's the simplest ingredient. All you got to do is just put some oil, some salt, some pepper, a little bit of garlic powder on there, and you toast it in the oven, 425 to 450 degrees for about 10 to 12 minutes, and it is the best thing ever.
Wow. So it's kale, which is healthy, and it's
Yes,
chips, which is tasty.
right. So
So
you get that crunch factor, but you still get that green. It's
yeah,
amazing. Like I swear by it.
right. Lovely. And which is that one dish that you cook really well? Like if any one of us, like your viewers, would come to Brooklyn, what would you cook? Which is that dish to die for?
Oh my gosh, I would definitely say honey glazed salmon with some type of mashed potatoes, probably like a garlicky mashed potatoes, and broccolini or some type of greens, I would say.
Yeah, the greens. Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
has to be some
and
type of greens there. I'm fanatic about my greens.
yeah, and the plate looks nice too, right? Nice and
Yes.
colorful.
Yes, yes. So that if it doesn't have colors, I don't want it. Like it has to
Yeah.
be something vibrant, something fresh. I love working with things that's from farms if I can help it. Even though if it's a farm or if it's some type of like meaty fish or something that has a lot of flavor, like even like chicken dishes, I'm all over it.
It's just like straight after this conversation, it's like already dinner time. So I'm
Yes.
sure, like, I don't want people running away to eat. They're already like hungry. But
Oh
this
my
is like really, really interesting.
yes.
Okay, so if it was not running, then which other sport do you see yourself in?
Oh my gosh, it would have to be powerlifting. Powerlifting is I'm actually more of a stronger powerlifter than I am a runner, and that's very weird to admit. I deadlift right now from what I've actually tried. My highest to date is 425 pounds in deadlifting. My back squat is somewhere around 375, 400, and my bench press is closer to 225 from what I remember. This was like right before the pandemic.
Wow.
And I literally had like 8 weeks to train. No, it was like 7 weeks to train for an event. And I was doing this in the middle of marathon training. So it was only but so much I can do. And I got so excited about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I actually made first place. Like,
Oh, wow.
I did not like I went into this and I did not think that I was gonna place at all. And my coach looked at me and she's like, I think you're about to win this. And I was like, I haven't won anything in my life. And I was like, I don't think so. And she's like, you just broke the record here. And I was like,
Wow.
you got to be kidding me. And she's like, yeah, you beat my record. And so, so like, if it was any sport outside of running, it would definitely be powerlifting or boxing because I just love boxing. I'm a boxing freak.
Wow. Okay, so powerlifting or boxing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Your most memorable marathon?
Oh my gosh. It's always New York City for me. New York City is home. I get the most interesting and layered stories. One of the most memorable stories I had was in 2019 where this woman, she didn't know who I was. She's actually a person that follows me on my page now. Her name is Lafinetta. She met me at mile 12 and she looked at me and she's like, I feel like I'm going to quit. And for some reason, she's very religious. And she's like, I feel like God sent me in your direction. And I was like, I don't know what sent you over here, but we're going to finish this race today. And, I remember that I got to experience helping someone and remember how good it felt to be able to help somebody see their race through. And after that, it really set the tone for my entire year to be like that, where I put it out there in my podcast where I was like, if you ever see me on the course, let me know and you need help. I got you covered on gels. I have you covered on food. I got you covered on conversations. I got you covered if you just need somebody to be quiet and to be next to you. And it changed my entire 2019, where it didn't feel like I was traveling alone. I didn't have my family really with me. As I was traveling for these races, I did 40 races that year. And
Wow.
it took me outside of New York City, and I just couldn't pack up my husband and my son in a suitcase. I'm like, oh, well, come with me. That my husband has a day job. My son had to go to school, and traveling alone is hard. It's exciting for the first couple of weeks, but it's really hard mentally to not have that stable support system that's there for you. And what it did was it afforded me the opportunity to connect with so many other runners. So when I actually did come back home to New York City and I was able to do that marathon, to be able to help somebody in my hometown, someone who was traveling from out of state. She was traveling from North Carolina, and her family was concerned. They're like, is she okay? And she was just like, here, can you just talk to them on the phone? And I was like, don't worry, she's fine. She's with me. She's going to make it to the finish line. When we made it there, I didn't care about the time. I didn't care about the pace. I just cared about just making sure that she was okay. And that's what I'm here like now. That may not be what I signed up for to get into the running community for, but this is why I stay here. I love the idea that I'm able to pay it forward at this place.
Yeah, and it's like so beautiful and wonderful in the running community that, you kind of slow down for someone else and make that person reach the finish line. And
Yeah.
more than your timing, helping that person is a bigger win.
Yes, it
It
is.
holds more value than
It's
anything else.
so much more value than just a medal. Like I think, sometimes because I have a lot of finisher medals at home and I look at them and I don't value the medals because it's like, oh, it's cute, bright and shiny. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your thing. But for me,
Yeah.
I love being able to look back at race bibs or look at medals, even the races that I don't actually have the opportunity to finish at times. I'm able to look at it and say, wow, I remember this person from this event. I'm able to remember this moment. I'm able to live out one of my favorite races. Actually, was a 5-miler. It had no medal attached to it, but I wore this big, bright tutu the entire race. And somebody captured a photo in the New York Roadrunners. They captured the photo and they caught me literally laughing as I was running. And it's one of my favorite pictures, running pictures to date. And I was just like, I remember starting that race being in so much pain because I have endometriosis. And I have a couple of other health issues. And by about 2 or 3, I was laughing with other people out there that I didn't feel the pain anymore. That's what makes me wake up and feel invigorated about being in the running community.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I have myself kind of, gone for races where you don't even know the person from anywhere and that person is struggling or I am struggling. And we are like talking to each other and saying, okay, we are at this kilometer. So let's do 1 kilometer at a time.
Right.
Let's reach the next one and then we'll see what needs to be done, whether we walk, whether we stop or whatever. So, you just go one by one by one and you just finish it. And you're just talking to a stranger,
Right.
and just going and finishing it. Yeah. And okay, so the last one in the rapid fire, on days when your motivation is really low, what do you tell yourself to get going?
I pause and I stop. I think too many people try to push through it. And the reality of it is sometimes we have to stop. We have to ask ourselves, am I actually okay? What is stopping me from feeling this way? If we take a couple of minutes to acknowledge that there's something wrong, I think that we will remedy much more than the problem that we have at the moment, but we can actually eliminate other problems along the way that may surface, or it actually gives us a kind of almost like a makeshift training plan of what do I do the next time that I feel this way. So for me, I remind myself to stop, to breathe, and to get myself motivated is a reminder of, one, it takes consistency, two, to acknowledge that there's a hardship there, and three, figure out the ways that I can come up with a solution to this. So if it is something where there's a day where I feel mentally heavy, or I don't feel, and I emphasize saying feel beautiful, not look beautiful, because I think when I look in the mirror, I'm like, oh
Yeah.
girl, you look good. Like
Yeah.
I don't think about, oh, she's plus size, oh my gosh, I don't have a six pack. I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, you are amazing, you are dope, you are everything that you ever wanted and prayed for. When I look in the mirror, that's my mantra that I tell myself in the morning to make myself feel good and to know that I can prepare myself for whatever the world presents to me. But when I don't mentally feel good, when I emotionally don't feel good, that's when it's harder for me to motivate myself to go out for a run or to go to the gym, to
Yeah.
do something. I have to stop myself in my steps and say, what is actually going on? Is it something that is this just a bad day? Or is this something that is much deeper than a bad day? And I try to handle those things first if I can, before I try to push myself to go out there. Because what's going to happen is if you avoid those things, it's going to surface at another time. And it's going to surface probably at a harder time where you need your body, your mind, and your spirit to really move the way that
Yeah.
you desire to do it. Instead of trying to push yourself through the hard points, really ask yourself, be honest with yourself and say, am I really okay? And if your answer is no, okay, cool. Let's take a couple of minutes to figure this out. So this way you're not taking this on with you as you are doing your running. Because you're not just running with your body, you are also running with your mind and you're running with
Mm.
your heart. When you are going out as a runner, especially when you're doing those long runs, like I can't emphasize it enough, when you're doing those long runs and you are taking on the weight of the world with you, you are
Yeah.
going to think about that for 18, 20, 22 miles of going out there, and you're carrying that with you. There's a possibility that it may shake off in a couple of miles, but there's a possibility you might be running for 22 miles with that
Yeah.
hardship in mind. Give
Yeah.
yourself grace.
And the other thing could also be that, I know it's easier said than done, but whenever you work out or go for a run, you always feel good after that.
Right.
So I know it's tough to just step out and do it because it's like your mood follows action.
Yes.
Like you have to do it to feel good. But I
Right.
know, like if you just don't feel like stepping out, like you said, you need to pause and reflect and figure out what is it that is kind of
Right. Yeah.
bothering you.
Yeah, because sometimes sometimes it's not even as heavy as it being something that's weighing on you. It's just like a day where it's just like you feel sluggish, and it's just like I really don't feel like going outside. So what I like to do is I like to prep my like right now, like I'm on vacation. I took some of my clothes, I pulled them to the side, I pulled out all my workout clothes in advance. I paired up the outfits. I choose bright, vibrant outfits to make me feel energetic and make me feel
Yeah.
good. I match up sneakers in a certain way. I set myself up for my best possible success to get myself out the door. So even if there's a day where I'm just like, you know what, I really don't feel up to it. If I know it's a workout day and I don't have anything else that's on the agenda, or I'm not required to kind of like dress up, I literally will wake up in the morning, brush my teeth, wash my face, and before I even I even make myself something to eat, I will put on my workout outfit, because that is one less task that I can find as an excuse to not go outside the door. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't say that I feel tired or I don't know what I'm going to wear. I already pulled it out and I'm wearing it. So now
Right.
all I have to do is the next step is to make that action to step outside, because I know once that sun hits me or the air hits me a certain way, whatever your preferable weather condition is, once I take those steps into, maybe I'm not into a run today, but I'm up for a walk. And then that walk slowly changes into a run. So this is something that might be helpful for someone else.
Yeah, and by the way, I mean, I love the colors that you wear and you post on your
Mm.
Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram, and they are amazing. I mean, the colors, and I can just tell, they're all vibrant, and that
Yes.
kind of also helps someone mentally to like step out. And if you,
Yeah.
like you said, if you've already changed into those clothes, what are you going to be doing sitting at home in your running clothes? You better step
Yes.
out.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I mean, because I think like, because one of the things that kind of annoyed me with the running space is that we encourage, particularly plus size people, we encourage people to go outside, go into the outdoors, but then we don't have clothes that actually look good on us sometimes, or they put us in cotton, which I mean, is sometimes cotton is like the worst thing to run in, and so for me, I'm just like, let me look for something that actually exuberates my happiness, and I'm like, this is the way I want to be seen. I want to be vibrant, especially if I'm doing night running. I want to be visible, so
Exactly.
someone can see me if I'm running and, I'm wearing something super bright and neon green. It's like, okay, well, we see her coming, and it could be a safety thing.
Yeah.
When I think about that idea that in the plus size community that we are still fighting for size equality when it comes down to clothing, a certain look, it is such a disservice that we don't have access to more. So when I do find colors or things that's super vibrant and it screams my personality, I go for it, and it makes me even want to show up even more than before, because I'm like, I get to showcase this pretty outfit.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
somebody else
True.
sees it and they're like, where is it from? I'm like, honey, you can go here. So I love
Yeah.
that.
I think I've already done like to two or three of your things. Like, where is this from, and what is this? And it's like so amazing. Yeah. So we have some nice comments coming in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good conversation. Felt like I was sitting with the two of you in my living room.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
definitely the feel that I like. Like when I talk with people, I just love being able to not do the pretentious stuff of like, yes, this is the stern interview and my shoulders are up this
Yeah.
way and I'm really tight. I'm like, no, we're gonna have a conversation. We just gonna talk. Um
Yeah. Yeah. And people are just loving it. I'm just putting like all the comments, one by one.
I love it.
Yeah. And all really, really
Oh,
nice. So you need to basically move, like come here.
yes, yes, yeah. I have to come there, and it cannot just be a trip that I do for a couple of days. I want to come out there for at least 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
just really get to know different areas, and then have an opportunities where I'm like, when I come here, the next time I come here, I don't want this to be a one time trip.
Yeah.
It's a place that's been on my bucket list for about 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, like before I was, I got into sports. I wanted to travel there for food and culture. And now I'm just like, now I'm an athlete. I want to travel there to be able to run in the area
Yeah.
and then have really good food.
Yeah. It's like the best of both. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have someone saying, I love the way you laugh.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so just a few more questions that are in the interest of time.
Sure.
I remember listening to one of your interviews, and you said that, there was a time when you dedicated each mile to a heckler or to someone who
Yes.
cheered you. So whether it's positive or whether it's negative. And, I personally thought that, if you're thinking that the distance is very, overwhelming, and if someone has heckled you in the past or if someone has cheered you, and how you dedicated that each mile to either a good comment or a bad comment. So
Yeah.
can you just tell our viewers about that, because I found that really inspiring and interesting.
Yeah. So I'm like, the name of my blog is called Running Fat Chef. And it's even the name of my podcast. And it's actually the name of my Instagram handle, my other Instagram handle, because my first one is I am L Shauntay. So it's pretty much like my it's I am, and then the L for my first name is Shauntay, the same way as here on the screen.
Yeah.
And that account has a huge following, but my other one is my smaller one, was my food handle, and that's Running Fat Chef. Now, one of the things when I created that site, I created that site in 2016, and people were just like, "Oh my gosh, why would you name it that?" People weren't thrown off by the running, they weren't thrown off by the chef, but they was like, "Why would you use the word fat?" And I was just like, I'm so tired of people weaponizing a descriptor. is a descriptor. Is I'm like, yes, I am a plus size woman. I am very knowledgeable of it. I did not need for you to tell me in a mirror of, did you know that you're fat? Oh my gosh, I had no idea that I was fat. Thank you for telling me. It's amazing of how eye opening, and I realized that we kept using the word fat like it was profanity. The first thing that people will do is they'll throw your weight at you, or the way that you look, your size, the practices. Like, if people don't understand a cultural difference, that's one of those things that's kind of heightened during, this pandemic, where we see a lot of people who are super insensitive about the things they don't know or the things that scare them. And I was so tired of people calling me fat behind my back as an insult that I was like, I'm just going to put it in the title. I was like, I'm going to call myself Running Fast Chef. And it's like, why would you use such a term? I said, well, you didn't have a problem saying that behind my back. What's the problem with me actually taking this term and actually making it something that's actually powerful, that's amazing, a way that I can celebrate the things that's on my skin? Here's my way of looking at it. Instead, if you do have the logic that fat is such a bad thing, if you did not have fat on your body, you wouldn't have a pulse. You wouldn't have life. If we didn't have fat in our food and some of our foods that we eat, we wouldn't have the flavor that we have. They're fat or lard or whatever way you want to look at it. I'm like, it adds seasoning, it adds soul, it adds flavor. And I was like, when I think about myself, I think I have seasoning, soul, and flavor all through my body. And I was like, I'm going to own this. But when I came into this space, people still had, and these people still do, sometimes I get some really vicious comments, that's the downside of being in the public eye, is that, people want you, they think that they can say things behind a computer screen that they would never say to you in everyday life. They would never feel so emboldened to say the most harshest and toxic of things. And in this space, I think that the media has normalized it for people like me to just take the insults, and we're just supposed to deal. And I'm like, aren't I human too? That just because I have a large platform doesn't, I didn't know that after 50,000 followers, it means that you're not human anymore. Like, oh, you lose your human rights. Nope, you don't have a pulse. You don't have blood. You don't have emotions. So I allowed myself to actually feel the things that people told me not to feel. And I was just like, yeah, it actually hurts, to be name called, to be ridiculed, to be made fun of, to be told that I'm less than. But I also took in consideration of all the beautiful comments. And I get more beautiful comments than I do with the negative comments. And I was just like, you know what? All these comments actually matter. And I know that if I carry this with me, I get to feel all of the feelings, and I can give myself my own tools to motivate myself when I encounter those harsh points. So the race that I took, the one that I keep mentioning, the Javelina 100K, going through 62 miles is not an easy feat. So I wrote down actual comments, good, bad, and horrible comments, even like ones that I've even internalized. I wrote down one comment that I internalized myself that was good, and one of them that was negative, that was positive about myself. And I wrote down a total of 63 comments, and I dedicated each mile to it. And I carried that note with me. No, actually, it wasn't 63. It was 100, because I did it for the 100K, and I carried it with me. And anytime that I encountered a hard point, I reminded myself why I showed up. And I was like, I want to show up. And like at one point, it was like, I want to show up for this person that told me that I was dynamic. I want to show up for the 10-year-old that told me that she didn't think that anybody looked like her. I wanted to show up for the person who told me that people like me don't do this. And I'm like, ha! I was like, you can screw it. I was like, you could bite it, because, I'm already out here. I'm like, you told me I can't be out here, and I am here. And I'm going to keep on showing up. So for me, it was a way to kind of secure myself of whether I finished this or I did it, which I did finish it. I told myself, this is why I'm here. This is why I'm thriving, and I'm living in this space. And guess what? There are more people out there than just me that's doing this, who look like me, who don't look like me, ones that don't even think that they're possible or capable of doing this, who now will see me and know that it is possible. I'm like, I'm not here for the people who don't appreciate me or don't think that I'm qualified to be in this space. I'm here for me, and I'm here for people who actually want to cheer me on and want to see themselves in this space. So that's what kept me going through that race and why I came up with the idea. I didn't think it was going to be, something that would be, noted. At that time, I still looked at it as my life is going to go back to being an everyday person. I was like, nobody's going to care about this. And here I am. It's been 4 or 5 years now getting the media coverage that I get. And I'm just like, wow, I'm like, I actually did that. That's probably one of my most memorable races because of that note that I just reminded myself, like, I am capable of doing all these hard things that people told me I couldn't do.
Wow. It's really beautiful. I mean, it's like 100K.
Yeah, oh my gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard because I think honestly, if you ask me of what part is the hardest, it's really getting past the start. The hardest mile is the first mile. And I know that it sounds very cliche, but the hardest part is getting past those first couple of kilometers and saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and not overthinking it and saying, oh my gosh, I have about 97 more kilometers to go.
If you think like that, you're gone.
No, like you just gotta kind of like, go with it and feel it. You find different ways to entertain yourself. What I noticed for me, what worked great for me was to have moments where I can actually listen to music. And then there was times where I just took in nature. There were times like at nighttime, that's the time where I don't encourage people to really kind of like run with music. I would say really keep that time to keep your head on the swivel, especially if you're out there with nature with coyotes and, wildlife. You want to be able to see that thing. So, I had my lamp on, and that's when the notes really came to like help me in the wee hours of the night. Cause it's something about the nighttime that our imagination is most lively. It's just us and our thoughts. And I would look back at that note and I'm just like, this is why I'm here. I'm like, I'm here to prove that these people are wrong. I'm here to prove that, yes, we deserve to be in this space and that there are much more than just me doing this and that I am not alone. And I might be, I was the last finisher for that race. Like literally the last finisher that crossed, because there's the 100-mile distance and the 100K. And I did the 100K. I watched people drop out that race. The temperature was exceptionally, like, it was terrible. I think at the highest point of that day, it was somewhere around 110 degrees, which is completely different from the humidity and the heat that I get in New York. Yeah. And all I kept telling myself is, I'm going to take this 1 kilometer at a time. I'm like, every step that I make makes it closer to the finish line. And as long as you have that in you and you're fueling yourself and you're taking your time, I allow people to help me, strangers to help me on the, like, yeah, you know what? It felt good to know that there was a community that actually was looking out for me. And they're like, I don't know you from anywhere, but I want to make sure that you're okay. That's what reminds me of why it's such a powerful statement to be in this space and why I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. And it's like just about people around you and all the comments that you had put in your mind. It basically kept you going. So that was your purpose, to actually prove to people that you can do it and inspire people who thought that they couldn't do it.
Right.
Yeah. So how has your life changed since you started your running journey or your fitness journey?
I will say that it's definitely it's a head trip. There are certain things that I can't do that I used to do, like being able to just go outside and go on my Instagram and say, hey, I'm in this location. I have to be a little bit more secure about that now. It does change up a lot of your lifestyle when you are so public. You have to be open to a lot of feedback. There are certain times I don't read certain things about myself on the internet. Like sometimes I don't Google search myself because I'm scared about some of the things I might read about myself. And it's hard. I don't think that there's enough conversation on that. Where people will sometimes tell me online, just focus on the positives. There's so many positive messages out there, or they'll tell me things like they'll say it's helpful. Don't read the comment section is a huge thing that I get. Don't read the comment section. And I'm like, if I don't read the comment section, that means I will never read the beautiful comments that come in from people. But reading the comment section means that I have to prepare myself mentally every single day of the possible comments that might come out there when I'm least expecting it. of someone's going to tell me that I'm an ugly bee, or I'm this, or I'm that, or make accusations of things that didn't happen. And it's something that I don't think anybody is quite prepared for in this space, especially not me, because I didn't walk into this space thinking that I was going to be famous,
Yeah.
or have any type of notoriety of any type of sort. I was scared of it. I denied being in this space for an entire year. And I was like, one of these days I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be right back in the culinary industry. I'm gonna be a chef again. I'm gonna have a normal job and nobody's gonna care about me. And then one day I realized, I cried the day I realized, like, I'm not going back to my everyday life. It scared me. I had to ask myself. That's when I took my time to breathe. And I was like, why am I so scared of this? And it was because I was so accustomed to people telling me what I could not do. When you
Mm.
take the limitations off yourself, that is a moment where you are now able to meet a different person in the mirror every single day. And I was like, why am I telling myself I'm not capable of doing the things I'm already doing? When at one point people told me people like me don't jump out of airplanes, I was like, I went skydiving. People like me don't travel to the mountains. I've traveled to the mountains several times. I've traveled internationally. I've done, people told me fat people like you don't run races like this. I'm like, I've taken on 25 plus marathons and completed them. I'm like, I've traveled around the world and met amazing people, learned different things. I learned about different cultures. Don't tell me that I'm not capable of being the best version of myself and more. Anytime that people give you that negative commentary, they're speaking from their experience and their own personal hardships. It has nothing to do with you. It is everything to do with them. And that's something
Mm.
that I remind myself of daily, that what somebody else feel about me, whether it's positive or negative, is about how I speak to myself. Because I can't do any of this work if I don't look at myself as a powerful force. It's definitely been it's definitely has some days where it's challenging, and I more or less worry about my family. I worry about my husband and my son, because this is not the thing that they sign up for. Like me, I've embraced it. But
Mm.
there are certain things that I do want to keep private, like, the welfare of my son, making sure my husband has that normalcy, because my life is not exactly normal.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
definitely, it's far from normal. Like, it's not normal to just say, hey, I'm going to do 4 media interviews and I'm gonna have coffee, with a celebrity today. Like, that's just not normal. Like, it's just this week
Yeah.
here, and then, oh, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna make dinner afterwards. So, like, how do you have a conversation, with your friends like that anymore? And like those conversations, because that became a norm for me, people started looking at me differently. Like, are you changing? Are you becoming this person I don't
Mm.
know? Are you relatable anymore? And I was so scared of losing the people who were here for me before all of this was here, because I didn't want to disconnect from them. So I always remind myself, meet people where they are. Not everybody's going to want to hear about my running adventures. Not everybody's going to want to hear about my traveling. They just want to know, how is Latoya doing? Not the celebrity, not the person that's on the magazine, not the person that does interviews. How is Latoya doing? And the more I reminded myself of that, the better it's been for me adapting in this space.
Yeah. That's lovely. So what's next? I don't, I know that you wanted to learn how to swim and get into
Yes.
triathlons. So is
Yeah.
that what is coming up next for you?
Yes. So the next thing actually coming up for me, I'm actually training for the Boston Marathon. I got an invitation to go to the
Oh,
Boston Marathon
wow.
through Amazon. So I'm going to be doing the Boston Marathon in person, the New York City Marathon virtual. I will be doing the Malibu Run in Malibu, California, and hopefully I'll be doing some international traveling. I'm hoping that if things kind of ease up, I'll be able to do that again, probably like at the beginning of 2022. It's so crazy to actually say about to go into 2022. I feel
Yeah.
like 2021 just started.
Right.
Um, so like I'm hoping that 2022 opens up the possibilities of, like, I saw one of the comments on there was you should do a powerlifting. Like, that is definitely something that is on the goal when I actually do off marathon season. The goal is to
Yeah.
actually dedicate some months to doing a powerlifting competition. I would love to
Wow.
sign up for a couple of those because it was so fun. It was so liberating and so fun. And it gave my muscles some time to kind of recover. So now I'm able to work on different muscles, during a different time. Because sometimes we can do something so much that we burn out. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't like this thing anymore. And I'm like, I don't ever want to hate running. And I don't ever want to tax myself out so much that now I can't do anything. So I
Yeah.
think that, dedicating a couple of months to powerlifting would be something to do. But the goal is to complete an in-person triathlon. So my swimming journey, I went from not knowing how to swim and being exceptionally scared to now I'm able to swim in a pool. A lot better. I still have a lot of ways to go. I have to learn how to get better in my technique, how to come up for air. I need to learn how to do open water swim, to know how to deal with waves. And, when I encounter
Mm.
those type of things, I do plan on signing up for an Ironman. Um, so those are the things that's on the goal right now. I just did my first triathlon. Um, oh my gosh, like a month ago. I did my first triathlon. It was a virtual triathlon,
Yeah.
and it was so hard. And that's crazy, like, saying that, from my perspective, because I know what it is to be an ultra
Yeah.
runner, but you're working different muscle groups.
Mm.
You're dealing, like, you're literally going from one activity to another discipline. And it's those transitions of going from the swim where you're using your entire body and you're being lifted up through water and you're moving through it to get out the pool, and you feel the heaviness of your body, and then you have to take that, and then you got to literally go into the bike, and then you go into the bike, you're out there for whatever amount of miles, and then now you have to take that motion of going from the bike to adapting to running. It's just it's it's
Yeah.
hard. Like, my body, it took about 4 days for my body to really bounce back to feeling somewhat normal.
Yeah. I mean, everything is hard for someone, who hasn't even done a 5K to a 10K to a half marathon,
Yes.
full marathon, sky running, triathlons, it seems it's like, you've just done like so much. And I think that's one thing about you, that whatever you fear, you take that on.
Yes.
You take it on as a challenge and you're like, I'm going to do it. So it's like, if you're scared of swimming, it's like in the trail run where you said you encountered water and, you were scared of water. You're like, I'm going to crash it. So it's
Yes.
like, whatever you fear, you take it head on, that I'm going to do this.
Yeah, yeah, and it takes time. So everybody's different. Some people are just like, no, it's gonna take me some years. Like, for me, it took me, what? Oh my gosh, like 6, 7 times to
Yeah.
actually, like, get past. Like, that was like my hardest fear. And it's like, how do you jump out of an airplane and you feel comfortable with that, and you don't feel good about swimming? And I'm like, with swimming, I've had that fear of drowning. Like, that's one
Yeah.
of my deepest fears, was to drown. It's just like, oh my gosh, like, what if I can't, fight my way up? And it was through the education of having a really good instructor, having a good mentor who was able to see where my fears was from. And the first thing he did was he looked at me and he says, why are you so intimidated of swimming in the water? It's one of the most natural things to do. And I was like, I almost drowned twice. And he's like, okay, let's take this down to basics. Then I realized that I actually have, I ended up learning through a therapist that I actually have an issue with being overstimulated. So it's too many things that's activated through my senses that was sending me off. So the water, I can feel the water touching my nose. I can feel it going to my ears. It was throwing off my senses so much that it was so hard to keep
Mm.
myself focused. I would instantly go into panic. So he kind of taught me a little bit of meditative techniques to take
Mm.
into the water, to learn how to listen to my breath work the same way that you would with running, the same way you would with
Yeah.
cycling, but just learning how to do the reverse, because your breathing is in reverse order when you're doing these things.
Yeah.
So the things that's super intuitive is now not intuitive anymore.
Yeah.
So once I learned that, it's made it so much easier to be receptive to the learning process.
Yeah. And it's like, really, I mean, there is so much to learn and so much to do. And you must be feeling wonderful after actually conquering the waters. It's like, I've done it and I can do it now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And yeah, and it's such a fun conversation, honestly, Latoya. And I think people have really enjoyed. And I know we've like overcrossed the time. It's
Yes.
always so much fun, hearing you laugh, hearing your stories, and just talking to you. So I would really like to thank you for being here and, inspiring us to get moving, irrespective of how and what we think of ourselves, really.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, and I would just like to like end this by saying that all of us start from where we are
Yeah.
and when we start our running journey, to being fit and healthy. While we may look at others for motivation and inspiration to make the commitment to our journey, we must always bear in mind that their journey may be different from ours. So the only thing that we must focus on is giving ourselves the confidence to move forward and extend a helping hand to those who are looking to find their self confidence in their personal journey. So yeah, so thank you so much, Latoya. And I would really like thank all the audience. They've been super supportive and with really lovely comments. In fact, one of them said you open a restaurant in India. So there
Love
are
it.
some of the comments.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like some of the comments. Maybe I'll just quickly check if I like missed anything. Yeah,
Oh,
love
thank
love
you.
the straight from the heart talk.
Thank you.
And yeah, and people have really really enjoyed this, Latoya, so thank you so
Thank you.
much. And I know you've taken out time from your holiday to spend time with us.
Yes.
We would love to hog more of your time, but in the interest, I will let you go.
Yes.
And I think everyone here wants to probably go have dinner with all the good stuff that you
Oh, I
spoke
would love
about.
it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And, for everyone who ever travels to Brooklyn, New York, just follow
Right.
Latoya on her Instagram. I've
I'm
been
your girl.
tagging her throughout. Yeah. Facebook. And you know what to do. Just kind of meet. And I would love to run with you. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Yes.
hopefully
Yes.
soon.
Thank you so much, there.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.